Hi, and welcome to my channel. It is book review time. We're going to be talking about Pet Sematary by Stephen King. If you are a child of the 80s and 90s like I was, I feel like our parents had no idea of the horror that they were exposing us to by giving us free reign to watch scary movies, because I think their version of scary movies was not our version of scary movies. That being said, I watched Pet Sematary when I was a child, and I have been forever tormented and terrorized by a few scenes in there. And ironically, this gives away no plot for anybody who hasn't seen it or read the book. But the scenes that have stood out for my whole life are not the scenes that you probably think of. They're the spinal meningitis scenes. Those were some of the most terrifying things that I had ever seen as a child. And still, I could not even remember what movie those scenes had come from. I just knew that they were buried deeply in my psyche from some movie that I had watched as a child. Then I start reading this book, and I'm like, oh, that's where that came from. That's where it came from. Also, I will not be watching this movie again. I already know what happens. I remembered what happened from years ago when I had first watched it. So, the book. At the beginning of this, in the opening credits, Stephen King himself says that he thinks this is the scariest book he has ever written. And part of that is because it's real things. Like, you're dealing with the fear of something happening to people that you love. And I would say this carries a more heavily drawn upon theme of death than a lot of Stephen King books. And yes, they all have death in them in some kind of way, but the theme of death and exploring what that means, and also what it means to children. Like, there's a huge discussion in here about one parent wanting their child to know nothing about people dying or animals dying or any of that stuff. And then another parent trying to say, well, it is normal to ask these questions and to wonder about these things. But there are things in their past that makes it hard for them to approach death in any kind of way. So anyway, this book, if you're looking for a happy ending, don't read this book. If you're looking for a wrapped up conclusion where everything gets tied up in a bow, don't read this book. But I really enjoyed it. Like, I'm giving it 4 out of 5. I was probably around 3.75, but I don't really do those kinds of things. So I would just say a low 4 out of 5 is what I'm giving this book. And I was thoroughly entertained the whole time and completely creeped out the first night I started reading it. I started reading it at midnight because it was for a readathon. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was still reading, and I had to get up and go to the bathroom, and I was so scared. And then last night when I was trying to finish it, I said to my husband, can you go walk with me? Because I only have about 20 minutes left in this book, and I want to go walk, but I cannot go alone because it's dark outside. So that's how I felt about this book. This is the most intimidating Stephen King book for me, just because of the reaction that I had when I saw the movie years ago. So I knew it was going to be scary. I knew it was going to be sad in places, and it definitely was. But I think this is a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it for anybody, maybe anybody who's not triggered by animal death or child death. If that's like a big issue for you, then maybe skip this one. But just read the synopsis. It tells you everything that happens. If you think you can handle it, I recommend that you read it and not watch the movie. It's terrifying. I'll see you guys later. Bye.